So our third speaker of the morning is Dr. Edith Guzman. Dr. Guzman is an interdisciplinary researcher, practitioner, educator, and consultant whose work investigates best practices on water management. She also focuses on climate adaptation, heat mitigation, and urban forestry for the sustainable transformation of the Los Angeles region and beyond. She earned her master's degree in urban planning from the UCLA School of Public Affairs and a bachelor degree in history and art history, also from UCLA, another of my alma maters, so I have them back to back. In 2023, Edith concluded her PhD studies at the UCLA Institute of the Environment and Sustainability. Prior to that, though, she served as Director of Research at Tree People. More recent days, Edith has co-founded and directs the Los Angeles Urban Cooling Collaborative, a multi-sectoral partnership working to alleviate the public health risks of extreme heat. The research has found that 1 in 4 lives currently lost to extreme heat could have been saved in Los Angeles had more trees in its infrastructure been more reflective, particularly in lower density tree canopy areas of the basin. Edith's research, demonstration projects, and recommendations are made through the lenses of urban planning, public health, behavioral sciences, biophysical sciences, and public policy. With these lenses in mind, I think we have a very interesting talk, and so please help me welcome Dr. Edith de Guzman.
Good morning, everyone. I'm going to time myself here, so hopefully I won't have to get the 5-minute mark, but I might. Thank you for inviting me, and I have to say you're all very fortunate to have Rick here because he had really in-depth conversations with each of these wonderful women of water so that we could bring you hopefully a quite thoughtful program today. So I'm going to talk about how our relationship to water and sort of our story of water is changing in Los Angeles. And we've already heard from 2 speakers who've given you a bit of a grounding in this. But the story of water here is changing, and the story of LA is one that is really deeply tied to water. Many of you have probably seen this image of the Cascades in Sylmar. This is 1913, the day that imported water began to flow into Los Angeles and was really a defining, changing moment for Los Angeles. At the time, LA's population was about 200,000 people. In the city of LA today, it's 4 million, county nearly 10 million, and as we heard from Kim, in the region of Southern California, it's almost 20 million people. And it's all because of how we changed our relationship to water and began to import water. This will be no surprise because you've heard a bit from the other speakers about where else we get that imported water. But let me tell you a bit about these sources. So the 2 lines, the green and yellow lines that lead to the Owens Valley area, Eastern Sierra. That was the first place where we began to bring water. And these are aqueducts that are operated by the Los Angeles Department of Water and Power. If you go up there, you will see LADWP trucks and signs that say property of the city of Los Angeles. And in fact, there is more acreage up there that belongs to the people of the city of Los Angeles than the footprint of the city of LA proper. The second imported water source that we began to draw from was in the 1940s, and that's the purple line. That's to the Colorado River Basin. And as you can see, it's a very large basin. It's a basin that serves 7 states, Native American tribes, and Mexico. But in most years, the water does not reach Mexico in the Gulf of California anymore. And it is said to be in a state of permanent mega drought at this point. And finally, the most recent source was the very long red line that you see, and that's the California aqueduct, which accounts for the single largest use of electricity in the state of California as water is pumped up the Tehachapi Mountains north of LA. For a variety of reasons, we can no longer kind of keep telling the same story. So there are, as you can see, legal decisions, the drought that I mentioned, various uses in the state of California, which is still the breadbasket for the nation, with a lot of agricultural use of that water. In fact, about 80% of water is used toward agriculture in California. And finally, resource depletion. This, what you see at the bottom right, is Owens Lake, Owens Dry Lake on many maps because of that use. So what we are witnessing in our lives is this phenomenon of climate whiplash. You know, we've had a couple of rather wet winters, and today we see that the majority of California is not in a state of drought. But if we go back a couple of years, we see that the majority of California was in either severe or extreme drought. And we are bouncing from one of these extremes to the next, which makes a whole host of water management challenges very real. So just to make sure that you're all awake, I'm going to ask you to actually get out your phones and scan the QR code, or you can go to menti.com and enter the code 99899055. And this is pop quiz time. I know we haven't totally told you the answer here, but you know, it's anonymous. Even if you get it wrong, it's okay. Which water source in the poll is not currently part of LA's drinking water supply? All right, is everyone able to get on? Are you on the Menti? Is it working? Thank you for the thumbs up in the back. All right. All right, what a bunch of smarty pants we have here. This is great. So yeah, so it's true, actually local groundwater is not part of every region's, or sort of every city's water supply. So that's not an incorrect answer, but that's right. Seawater desalination is presently not a supply for cities within the LA area. The reason being that we have a lot of other options, and seawater desalination is sort of a last resort when we are unable to do other things. We're very fortunate to have vast groundwater basins in the LA area. That's not true of places, for example, like San Diego, which does rely, at least in part, on seawater desalination. We're going to come back to the polling in just a few slides, so hang on to your phones. How often do you get to hear speakers tell you to actually use your phones? So we have a structural water supply crisis in urban California, and that's, you know, where the vast majority of us live. We already heard from Rick that places like Mexico City are approaching what's called day zero, the day when there's no more water available. And in the recent drought, a couple of years back, places like Marin, just north of San Francisco, and a number of other medium-sized water systems in California were actually very close to that same fate. And we happen to have the fortune of Mother Nature bringing us wet winters. But what would have happened if that didn't, you know, if we continued down the same trajectory? We really need to have new ways of diversifying and increasing resilience, and we've heard about some of them already today, and we'll hear some more from our other speakers. But when we have such highly fragmented water management, change is not easy to come by. It's just not. We've been doing things a certain way for a long time. There are not only infrastructural systems, but systems of governance that are very deeply entrenched in the way that they work. In LA County, we have 200 water management agencies. 200, okay? Good luck getting everybody to agree on, you know, what element water is made of, right? Let alone anything else. In California, it's 3,000. So it's, again, a very tall order to get change to be agreed upon. But we also have the need to do it. So we're beginning to really collectively look at how to grow that local water supply and increase our resilience for those dry years that are, once again, certainly going to be returning. The menu is limited, but there is potential, but potential changes depending on the city and depending on the location. Not every part of LA has a dewatering problem, for example. So here it's part and parcel of what you deal with daily. So we've already heard about conservation and recycling. Centralized recycling is the thing that is really getting a lot of attention right now. And in fact, my colleagues and I at the Luskin Center for Innovation, along with LA Waterkeeper, have been facilitating a process with the major water agencies in the region to talk about how to better coordinate about $20 billion of investment that is going into increasing recycling to potable water levels. That's happening right now. Further along is the notion of doing more decentralized recycling. So that might be where you have water treatment plants that are smaller and more distributed. Desalination, as we heard, but fortunately in Los Angeles, that is not something that we need to seriously look at because we have a lot of other good options first, and stormwater capture as well. So back to your poll now. I think I might have to advance this. Let's see, how do I do this? Okay, I'm curious which water management practice you're curious about. What do you believe holds promise for West Hollywood? And between all of those various options, wastewater recycling, stormwater capture, conservation, or wait, what are we talking about? That is also an option if you didn't get enough coffee on the way in. Oh, I see what somebody is saying. Wait, what are we talking about? So there's a lot of interest in stormwater capture, conservation. Those seem to be the main two, but we also have some interest in wastewater recycling. And even a couple of folks who are interested in seawater desalination. Great, so I'm glad stormwater capture is one of them because I'm going to talk to you about it some more now. So I should have planted a couple more people in there to just increase that note. Okay, thank you for that. So I'll share a process that when I was director of research at Tree People, as Rick mentioned, my colleagues and I facilitated, actually together with Tetra Tech. So we realized that part of the process of solving sort of the problem of how do you change things when things are so fragmented is to just get the collaboration going. And so toward that, we established a regional sort of water management program called the Greater LA Water Collaborative. And it was really about testing out how can we have these major agencies from the city, Sanitation and Environment, Department of Water and Power, as well as from the county, co-plan and execute a project around that would look at flood management, water supply augmentation, recycled stormwater management, et cetera. And so the notion behind this program was that, this is largely what we're still doing, even though we're trying to move toward this sort of one water concept. But traditionally, water management has been thought of in these various sort of separate buckets. And as we're moving toward this more, demanding era, this is really the vision, right? That many in this room, I think, have been supporting, and that's thinking of water as being one bucket. And the slightly different sort of innovation that we had with this program was, you see these little orange things. That's our way of saying this is smart infrastructure. So there's real-time controls that are tied to it. So what do we mean by that? You already heard about cisterns and and rain barrels and capturing water. And you've heard about rain gardens, sort of a green infrastructure, let the water sort of sink. Here, with this program, we added this real-time communication component. And here's essentially how it works. So let's say you have a single-family home. You've got a nice, either very large rain barrel or small cistern out front. And let's say, through the rain that fell, whenever, you've got a pretty full cistern, and it's nice and sunny. Well, let's say that by the middle of the week, there's some rain in the forecast. So through that real-time smart infrastructure control, you can tell that cistern to drain into the ground, because the idea is now you've created some capacity for when that rain falls, so that you create less of a flood hazard downstream. So you're able to capture that water when it falls and essentially create a more dynamic system. So imagine doing this across many parcels, right? That's just at the residential parcel level, but the idea is to really connect that to the larger regional level from the street scale, with a variety of underground as well as surface treatments that invite that water in and allow that water to infiltrate, all the way to the regional scale. So things like doing infrastructure under parks and play spaces. With the notion, again, ultimately you've got this kind of connected watershed that is using these types of technologies. And so that was all very theoretical, but we really wanted to get these agencies to co-plan actually doing retrofits. And so we selected 6 single-family homes, 3 in the Valley and 3 in South LA. And where appropriate, we did infiltration. Where not appropriate, we did storage, like you can see in the tanks. Again, the innovation was being able to manage these from afar, and that's, we found, is sort of the thing that made the agencies more interested in this, is they were able to do some management and understand what was happening on these private properties. And so we could see what are the water levels, at what point do they get released, et cetera. We also did a regional assessment, and this was really, Tetra Tech using their very, high-level sort of spatial analysts. And so we looked at the 1.5 million single-family parcels in Los Angeles County, and tried to see, where is it appropriate to do some of these various types of technologies, whether it is the more passive sort of green infrastructure, rain gardens, or to do storage. And so we essentially found that there's the ability to do some version of this on 1.2 of the 1.5 million single-family parcels in the county. And so here's, we don't have West Hollywood exactly delineated. We have West Hollywood and Beverly Hills, but what you can see is I tried to zoom in a little bit to show that there is the capacity to do some form of a rain garden in portions of West Hollywood, but that there is, this model did pick up the fact that the liquefaction risk is present. So we would have to really think on a site-by-site basis and ensure that, things are appropriate before we go ahead and break ground, right? Here's what it looked like for rain harvesting cisterns. So storage, less of the problem of creating a liquefaction risk. We used a variety of metrics for evaluation for this, looking, if we were to scale up to this county-wide sort of approach, what would it do across these various metrics? And here's what we found. If we were to scale this up, about 17% of the county's impervious area could be captured just by virtue of doing residential capture. So roofs make up about 17% of that impervious area. Water demand could be met, about 10% of water demand could be met through this. So, it's not a lot, but it's also not insignificant. So, so there would be some benefit there. We used zinc as a sort of an indicator of water quality. There are others, but we found that about 15% of county-wide zinc loading could be reduced. And we also looked at, well, what does this mean for like on-hand water? If we were to get cut off with our, water supplies from the aqueducts, the various imported sources, how much would we have on hand? About 350 million person days of water. So that essentially means we could sustain the county's 10 million residents for about a month, should we get cut off. So that was, a quick overview of history of our relationship to water. I hope you got a bit of a sense of how that relationship is changing. And I know that our remaining speakers will take a deeper dive into that relationship. And I really appreciate your participation and your attention.